Members of the House, please be seated.
Will the House come to order, Mr. Clerk?
Aloha and good morning. Today's invocation will be delivered by Representative Scott Y. Nishimoto. Will the members who wish to participate please rise?
Please be seated. So the question I get asked most often at the Capitol is, how's Buzz doing? And at first I found it an odd question because, random people used to come up to me that I don't know and ask me how Buzz is doing. But it made me realize that, Buzz was really part of our Capitol family, and that through his kind and gentle soul, he had really touched people here at the Capitol. And that's why it's with a heavy heart that I tell you that he passed away this past weekend. He had been diagnosed with cancer about a year ago. And thankfully, they gave him 1 to 3 months, but thankfully he was with us for almost a year. But as you can imagine, it was a tough weekend for me and everybody that loved him. And I spent a lot of time reflecting on what he meant to me. And one of the things that I really took away from my relationship with him was that he really did make me a better person. Far more compassionate than I was before, far more caring. And I ask that today, if you could all reflect on the people that make you better people, or the Buzzes in your life, and you just take a moment to reflect on them and maybe even thank them, because I think we don't take enough time thinking about these people. And if you could also keep Buzz in your thoughts and your prayers, as I'm sure we are in his. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative Nishimoto. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Aquino, Ms. Bellotti, Mr. Bronco, Mr. Cullen, Ms. DeCoit, Ms. Eli, Mr. Ganaden, Mr. Gates, Ms. Har,
Present.
Mr. Hashem, Mr. Hashimoto, Mr. Holt, Ms. Ichiyama, Mr. Iligan, Mr. Johansson, Ms. Capella, Ms. Kitagawa, Mr. Bertrand Kobayashi, Mr. Dale Kobayashi, Mr. Kong, Mr. Lopresti,
Present.
Ms. Lowen, Ms. Luke, Ms. Martin, Mr. Matayoshi, Ms. Matsumoto, Mr. McDermott, Mr. McKelvey, Mr. Mizuno, Ms. Morikawa, Ms. Nakamura, Mr. Nakashima, Mr. Nishimoto, Mr. Ono, Ms. Okimoto, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Peruso, Mr. Quinlan, Mr. Sayama,
Excused.
Mr. Takayama, Mr. Takumi, Mr. Tam, Mr. Tarnas, Mr. Todd, Mr. Tokioka, Mr. Ward, Ms. Wildberger, Mr. Woodson, Mr. Yamane, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Speaker.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, 50 members are present, 1 is excused.
Item 2, reading of the Journal, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, may this matter be deferred.
So ordered. Item 3, Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the Governor?
Mr. Speaker, there are none.
Item 4, Mr. Clerk, are there any Senate communications?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if you and the members will turn your attention to the addendum to today's order of the day. We are in receipt of a communication transmitting SCR number 22, Senate Draft 1, having been adopted in the Senate. We are in further receipt of communications transmitting the noted Senate bills, all having passed third reading in the Senate.
For the first reading motion, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Senate bills laying on the clerk's desk pass first reading by title.
Representative Matsumoto.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. For the motion to suspend the rules, we're on the Part 1 consent calendar. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House in order to consider certain House bills for third reading by consent calendar.
Representative Matsumoto.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. Members, we're on item 5A. For the third reading motion, Representative Bellotti, this is the consent calendar.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 1 through 15 and the House bills listed on pages 1 through 19 as may be amended past third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, there will be no discussion as these are the items that are agreed to by this body for placement on the consent calendar. We'll be taking the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye.
Okay, for members on the remote members, are there any no votes? Okay, there are no votes. Are there any other no votes on these measures before us?
Speaker,
Representative Ward.
I request a no vote on HB 1027.
What page is this?
Yeah, that's what I was having a problem finding out. It's the MLDC fund. I don't think it's on a page, is the point. It's the consent calendar of which I believe we have to speak out.
Mr. Speaker, HB 10,
Representative Bellotti.
I believe HB 1027 is on page 29.
Page 29? Page 29? All right, Representative Ward, this measure is not on the consent calendar. It's on page 29, ordinary calendar. All right, have all votes been cast on the consent calendar? Okay, if so, said measures pass third reading. Members will be taking a short recess before we reach the ordinary calendar. Recess.
Members of the House, please be seated.
Will the House come to order? Okay, members, before we get to the consent calendar, the chair has an announcement. And this is for the consent calendar for members who have written remarks in support or in opposition to a measure that was on the consent calendar. Please submit a list of those House bills to the clerk by the adjournment of today's floor session. And that's just for the consent calendar measures. All right, we're on part 2, ordinary calendar. Representative, before we take up the vote, members, we will be deferring on page 20, SCR 849, one legislative day. That's House Bill number 593. Okay, Representative Bellotti.
Mr. Speaker, with the exception of HSCR number 849, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 20 through 24 and that the accompanying House bills as may be amended pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, we'll take up first on page 20, SCR 853. Any discussion? All right, 854, 855. Okay, the next page, 856, 859, 862, 864, 865. Representative Ward.
Speaker, if we go back to 864, please.
Okay, 865 first. Any discussion? If not, 864, Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, 864, I've spoke a number of times regarding the stadium.
This is support or opposition?
This is, again, in opposition because it's missing one thing, Mr. Speaker. And that is, as I've even had a floor amendment earlier, a floor amendment that says we should monetize the naming of the stadium. Mr. Speaker, we have a number of examples of that occurring. United Airlines Stadium, $69 million for USC. University of Washington, $41 million for a 10-year contract with the Alaska Airlines. Colorado State, kind of like the size of our state in UH, $38 million for a deal with a local credit union. Boise State, $12.5 million. Mr. Speaker, we need to have taxpayers' money in mind. You know, even if we got $5 million like they did at Stan Sheriff, UH got $5 million from Bank of Hawaii. Mr. Speaker, I don't know why there's not more entrepreneurial thinking. It's time to, I think of taxpayers just other than some of the things that we have without thinking much other than bureaucracy. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, we obviously need a new stadium. It's a moneymaker, and I know there's a great plan for it. But if we put up for naming rights, there would be at least 5, 10, 15, 20, sometimes multiple millions of dollars. We have to start thinking more entrepreneurial. We have a Department of Business and Economic Development that I understand has not put in one pro-business bill during the time when the businesses are suffering the most. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised that I have to stand up and say, hey, let's get entrepreneurial, let's get some money to save taxpayers' money. So with that, Mr. Speaker, it's a good bill, except it's missing the most important thing, and that is to bail out the taxpayers for at least 5 to 20 to 30 million, of which we could use by having naming rights at the new stadium. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I will keep continually and pushing for entrepreneurship, innovative, creative thinking, not bureaucratic thinking, the way it is in this bill. Thank you, Speaker.
All right, is there further discussion on 864?
Mr. Speaker,
Representative LaPresti.
Thank you. No vote for me, please.
So ordered. Further
Any
discussion?
comment?
You have any
Sure.
comments?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
I'd like the comments from second reading inserted to the journal as if they're my own this time around.
So ordered.
And I just would reiterate, I'm opposed to this on many levels. The most important thing, in my opinion, that is missing is the emergency laydown area and the designation for that in the case of natural or man-made disaster. Thank you.
All right, is there further discussion on 864? If not, next page, 866.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Prusso.
Mr. Speaker, I'm on SCR 865.
Okay, let's go 866 first. Representative DeCoit,
Mr. Speaker, WR in brief comment.
please proceed.
While I can appreciate the public meetings in counties, I'd just like to consider that Maui County has 3 islands and to consider having them on those islands. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was with reservations, correct? Okay. Any further discussion on 866? If not, we'll go back to 865. Representative Prusso.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I stand in opposition to this measure because I think that it's premature. We are in the first year of implementation of a brand new special education pupil allocation formula, and there are also administrative mechanisms designed to address the issue that was brought forward by Dreamhouse. So for those reasons, I stand in opposition.
All right, is there further discussion on 865? If not, go back to the next page, 869. 876. Representative Capella.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Prusso.
With reservation.
So ordered. Further discussion on 876? If not, 878. 882. Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Okay, next page, 884. Representative Ward.
With
Okay, let's finish
reservations.
884. Any discussion? If not, we'll go back to 882. Representative Ward.
With the reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto.
Sorry, could I just ask for permission to insert written comments into the journal?
So ordered on 882. Any Representative Capella.
At the appropriate time, can we please go back to 884?
Yes, let's finish 882. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, next page, 884. Representative Capella.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Ward.
Same request.
Representative Ward. Reservations, so
Yes,
ordered.
same request, reservations, please.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 885. Representative Sayama.
In strong support, Mr. Speaker. Brief comments.
Please proceed.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the chairs as well as the members of the committees that have passed this really important bill. This measure would provide really critical regulatory safeguards to protect Hawaii's families from catalytic converter thefts that have been going throughout this pandemic. You know, families really depend on their vehicles to get to work, to drive their kids to school, and to conduct their daily business. And I'm really happy and grateful that members of this House have passed this measure expediently. And I look forward to working with the Senate as well as HPD to ensure the proper administration and enforcement of this measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Representative Ward.
Speaker, strong support.
Please proceed.
And congratulations to the new representative from Palolo who has kind of sent out the warning to all of us who either buy or have already bought a Prius, Speaker, not mentioning yours, and others that are targeted for these catalytic converters. So let us be on our alert for not only the ones that are electric, but also the ones that are half electric and half gas. So again, commendations to the young man from Palolo. Thank you.
All right, is there further discussion on 885? If not, 889. 890, next page, 892. Representative Matsumoto.
890, please.
Okay, let's 890. Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Ward.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Capella?
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Further discussion on 890. Representative Peruso?
With reservations.
So ordered. Okay, next page, 892. 894. Representative Peruso?
On SCR 892 with reservations, please.
Okay, on 892, so ordered. Further discussion on 892. Representative Ward?
Same request.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 894. Any discussion on 894? 895? Representative Bellotti? Okay, 896. Representative McDermott?
No vote. Comments in the journal, please.
So ordered. Representative Okimoto?
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto?
Same request.
So ordered. Further discussion on 896. Okay, 900. SCR 900. Any discussion? All right, members, is there any discussion on this or any other item? If not, we will take the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 21, Stancom report number 856, HB number 553, Representative Kong votes no. Stancom report number 859, HB number 1017, HD1, following vote no. McKelvey, Tokioka. Stancom report number 865, HB number 1294, HD2, Peruso votes no. On page 22, Stancom report number 878, HB number 686, HD2, the following vote no. Eli, Ganaden, Capella, Dale Kobayashi, Peruso. Stancom report number 882, HB number 891, HD2, the following vote no. Decoit, Kong, Tokioka. On page 23, Stancom report number 884, HB number 1246, HD2, following vote no. Decoit, Dale Kobayashi, McKelvey, Tokioka. Stancom report number 890, HB number 529, HD1, McKelvey votes no. Page 24, Stancom report number 892, HB number 662, HD1, following vote no. Capella, Lowen, Martin, Tam. Stancom report number 894, HB number 884, HD2, Capella, Peruso, Tam, vote no. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 20, SCR 854, HB 333, HD3, Representatives McDermott and Ward vote no. On page 21, SCR 862, HB 1019, HD2, Representatives McDermott and Ward vote no. SCR 864, HB 1348, HD2, Representative Ward votes no. On page 22, SCR 869, HB 1253, HD3, Representative Ward votes no. SCR 876, HB 1118, HD2, Representative Okimoto votes no. And SCR 882, HB 891, HD2, Representatives McDermott and Okimoto vote no. On page 23, SCR 884, HB 1246, HD2, Representative McDermott and Okimoto vote no. On SCR 890, HB 529, HD1, Representative McDermott and Okimoto vote no. And on page 24, SCR 896, HB 1096, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no.
Okay, the chair would just note on page 21, SCR 864, we have a no vote for Representative Lopresti. Okay, for the remote members,
Mr. Speaker? Over here to your right.
Representative McKelvey.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake. I apologize to everybody. On House Bill 890, please withdraw my green slip and enter with reservations. Thank you.
That's on SCR 890.
890, yes, thank you.
Withdraw your green slip. I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please? Did you want to aye vote or aye with reservations?
I with reservations and comments to the journal. Thank you.
Okay, so ordered on 890. For the remote members, are there any no votes?
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Har.
please have the clerk on SCR 882, please have the clerk register a no vote for me on House Bill 891 HD2.
All right, that's page 22, SCR 882. So ordered. Further no votes from the remote members?
Mr. Speaker, I
Representative
just wanted to make sure that number was correct. It was HCR 864, HB 1348. The no vote.
All right, that's so noted.
Thanks.
All right, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, so said measures passed third reading. We're on page 25. So members, please note that the following measures will be deferred one legislative day. On page 25, SCR 903, it's House Bill number 476, House Draft 3. On page 27, SCR number 927, House Bill number 80, House Draft 1. On page 28, SCR number 928, House Bill number 131, House Draft 1. And on page 29, SCR number 940, House Bill number 1184, House Draft 1. Representative Bellotti.
Mr. Speaker, with the exception of HSCR numbers 903, 927, 928, and 940, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 25 through 29 and the accompanying House bills as may be amended past third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, members, is there any discussion beginning on page 25, SCR number 902? Okay, 910. 913, Representative Quinlan.
I'm sorry, on 910, Mr. Speaker?
913.
At the appropriate time, can we go back to that?
Okay, let's go back to 910. Representative Quinlan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion on 910.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Kitagawa.
with reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Okimoto. Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition.
Please proceed.
Just a few brief comments. Mr. Speaker, I came here in 96, my first time here, and I've seen us, things that we do usually is to ensure more regulation, ensure a greater education, ensure a greater degree of safety for the licensed professionals who come before us and who the public is exposed to. This is the first time I've seen us take a step backwards, in my view, lowering the requirements for an invasive surgical procedure. As you can see this thing on my hand here, I had surgery last 2 weeks ago. I had two doctors, an anesthesiologist and an orthopedic surgeon, just to fix my finger. And I look at this and say, wait a minute, I wouldn't feel safe allowing my daughter to have an abortion under these circumstances. I mean, I'm pro-life to begin with, obviously. I'm not going to change anybody's mind here. But why would we lower the safety threshold? Why would we lower the education that's required? And, well, I know there's arguments why they do that, but I just don't think it's the right thing to do. And comments in the journal, too, please.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Okimoto.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition
Please proceed.
to HB 576 HD3. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am unapologetically pro-life. To me and many others, there is no compromise to the life of a child. This is not a stance I take lightly. This is a conviction to protect life, and one that is under constant attack. The pro-life, pro-choice debate has been around longer than I've been alive and has been debated ad nauseum. At the end of the day, this body is making a value judgment as a society, both as Americans and as citizens of Hawaii. For the women legislators, we make value judgments based on our own experiences and what is important to us as women. Women are not monolithic and shouldn't be chastised for speaking their truth and voting on their convictions. For me, I'm a woman who was born and raised on the island of Kauai. My biological grandmother was faced with a similar decision that many women face in their lives. Do I keep this child inside of me or do I terminate it? This is one of the most difficult decisions we may make as women, no matter our background. In my case, my biological grandmother chose to keep her future daughter and put her up for adoption. Had she made a different decision, Mr. Speaker, I would not have the privilege of addressing you and this body today. Mr. Speaker, we may hear heartfelt speeches on each side, heartbreaking stories of women who have struggled through the difficult choice of terminating their pregnancy, and those who made the difficult choice of keeping their child in less than ideal circumstances. We may debate the technicalities of whether APRNs should have the authority to perform aspiration abortions. But for me, the choice is as simple as life and death. I am a mother of two beautiful daughters, and I work diligently to instill the same values to them that made me who I am today. These values are the reason for my opposition. From the beginning, the pro-life movement has been about assisting women in crisis pregnancies. The movement that launched crisis pregnancy centers, the Sisters of Life, and so many other organizations to help house, feed, clothe, and care for expecting mothers has always viewed motherhood as vastly superior to abortion. While I completely understand the arguments from my colleagues about the access to care in our rural areas and on our neighbor islands, I urge us to consider expanding access to contraceptives instead of expanding access to the brutal nature of procedures such as aspirational abortions. Mr. Speaker, as you might know, we celebrated just yesterday International Women's Day. Women such as Harriet Tubman, Amelia Earhart, Mother Teresa, Susan B. Anthony, and countless others who have paved the way for myself and my 13 fellow female legislators to sit on this floor today. These pioneers have come from all walks of life and have had deeply held convictions all across the political spectrum. At the end of the day, we as a body are making a value judgment on behalf of our residents. Today, I am choosing to stand with women who stand for life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Tokioka.
With reservations.
So ordered. Is there further discussion? Representative Ichiyama.
Mr. Speaker, in support,
Please proceed.
I want to clarify some of the statements that were made by prior speakers. First and foremost, this bill does not authorize APRNs to perform surgery. APRNs are not trained to perform surgery, and none of them want to do surgery. And I think that point should be made very clear here. What this bill allows is is to allow APRNs to practice to the top of their training and their scope, as this body has done numerous times over the past years. This bill would allow APRNs to prescribe a medication that can terminate pregnancy up to 9 weeks, and APRNs already have prescriptive authority for a wide range of other drugs. It would also allow APRNs to perform aspiration abortions, which is not surgery. It is a procedure that's performed in an office. Under this bill, that requirement remains. It must be performed in an office. And it is a simple procedure that takes 5 to 10 minutes. It uses vacuum suction. It is very similar to a procedure that APRNs already do called an endometrial biopsy, where they use vacuum suction to remove the lining of the uterus so that a sample can be taken and tested. And we heard numerous testimonies from doctors, from OBGYNs. In fact, the Hawaii chapter of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists came out in strong support of this measure. And they are the women's health professionals who are trained in this area, who specialize in this area, who perform these procedures. And they resoundingly, unanimously said that it is safe for APRNs to perform this procedure, that they can be trained and practiced to the top of their scope. I also want to note, in the larger discussion about the scope of practice for APRNs and other medical professionals that this body has considered in the past, and sometimes what gets lost is the discussion about the cost of health care, Mr. Speaker. We are facing skyrocketing costs in health care, and by allowing well-trained professionals to practice to the top of their scope helps reduce those overall costs for us. But I don't want to miss the larger point of this legislation and why I'm in support. It's about access, Mr. Speaker. Prior to the pandemic, access on the neighbor islands to abortion care was severely restricted. And during the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, that situation only got worse. For example, Planned Parenthood currently flies over doctors to Maui County to provide care 2 days a month. They had to suspend that during the very darkest days of our lockdown because it wasn't safe for the doctors to travel. And that meant that women in Maui County had no access, Mr. Speaker, because of the unique situation caused by the lockdown. In essence, when we legalized abortion in this state, which has been the law of the state for the past 50 years, but by limiting it to physicians only, we've created a Dutch door. And Mr. Speaker, this bill addresses that situation and ensures that no matter where somebody lives in the state, that they can have access to this critical health care. And permission to insert further comments to the journal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Representative Onishi.
Thank you, Speaker. In strong support.
Please proceed.
Yes, and I'd like to have the words from the chair for PDP entered as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Speaker, I'm unapologetically pro-choice. As the father of 3 daughters and the grandfather of 2 granddaughters, I am fully supportive of their choice to decide what happens to their bodies. I also represent a very rural district, as the previous speaker has indicated, has had challenges with medical services during this pandemic. This bill allows for certain procedures to be done by advanced practice registered nurses who have been trained and fully licensed to do these procedures. I don't believe that there is a health risk under these circumstances. And, again, it's very important that my daughters and my granddaughters are able to make the choices that they want to make and not the government. Thank you.
Representative Ganadin.
In strong support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
Requesting that the words of the chair of EDP be entered into as my own.
So ordered.
Further, Mr. Speaker, this is of great importance to my community. Healthcare and women's right to choose is constantly comes up for members of my community that go to church often and consider this as a part of their faith in discussion. I rise in strong support as a member of this body with a Y chromosome. Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, I rise in opposition.
Please proceed.
There are some of us who believe that life begins at conception, and it's all about life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And Mr. Speaker, life doesn't belong in a vacuum cleaner. May I have additional comments inserted in the journal?
So ordered.
Thank you.
Lord, is Representative Martin.
I rise in strong support and would like to have the words of the representative from Salt Lake entered as my own. Thank you.
So ordered. Representative Decoit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support.
Please proceed.
And I'd like the chair of PDP be inserted into the journal as if it was my own. Talk about rural, I think I represent the most rural district, separated by a body of water of 3 different islands. As we saw many people that had tried to come down and get services that were not provided on Molokai, Hana, and Lanai, we knew that it became a huge challenge. So I appreciate the fact of that this bill allows us to have those choices and allows us to have resources available for young women that need guidance and support along with those services. And then I wish to insert comments to the journal. Thank you.
Okay, so ordered. Representative Capella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would also like to have the words in strong support, and I would like to have the words from the representative from Salt Lake inserted into the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered.
And another brief comment on top of that.
Please proceed.
Today we've heard from a number of different representatives about being pro-life or pro-choice. And one thing that I want people to also realize is that we have to take into consideration the life of the mother. I have a very dear friend that would not be alive if she did not have access to an abortion. And we have to think about those people as well. We have to think about young women who have been raped. We have to think about young women who have had so many different pains thrown at them, and something like this being just one more obstacle. And whether or not we choose to keep a child or to terminate for our own choices, we have to be able to have that choice, and we have to be able to have access to that choice. And I think it's our job as legislators to provide possibility, to provide support, to provide options, and not to provide barriers or hate towards those women or towards those individuals. And I also want to say, I think that we also need to think about the many women, as it was International Women's Day yesterday, the many women whose names are not highlighted, whose names may never be known because they didn't have access to a choice to choose what to do with their own body. So, thank you.
Representative Nakamura.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support,
Please proceed.
may I ask that the words of the chair of EDP be entered into the journal as my very own.
So ordered.
Representing the island of Kauai, access to this type of care is not available. Women will have to pay for travel, sometimes overnight expenses, lodging, and so forth. This is something that's needed for many neighbor island rural communities. And I also feel that APRNs have been given via state policy the authority to act in many ways as a primary care provider. They are permitted to evaluate patients, order and interpret diagnostic tests. They're able to prescribe treatments and medications. Mr. Speaker, they already provide a wide range of services. APRNs administer anesthesia during surgeries and manage chronic conditions like hypertension and diabetes to provide gynecological care and family planning services. So for these reasons, in strong support. Thank you.
Representative Wildberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support.
Please proceed.
Brief comment. Thank you. I'd also like the words from the chair of the PDP committee inserted into the journal as if they were
So
my
ordered.
own. An additional brief comment. I'd also like to show my appreciation for the representative from the Ilani highlighting that contraception is also very important in access. During the Trump administration, Hawaii lost $2 million in funding for family planning, and access to contraception and disease treatment was eliminated for many low-income people, especially on the neighbor islands. And when you don't have access to contraception, unintended pregnancies are a result. So thank you.
Okay, Representative Takumi.
In support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
I'd just like to address the comments made by my good friend, the representative from Ever Beach, regarding
this seems to be watering down our standards and widening the scope of practice for professionals that heretofore did not have that. I don't recall if he was here in 2015 when we enabled physician's assistants to have full prescriptive authority, joining 40 other states that allow that. We've also widened the scope of practice for optometrists relative to ophthalmologists, and we've obviously had very robust discussions, didn't happen, but robust discussions as to whether or not psychologists should have a prescriptive authority. So this is nothing new. Thank you.
Representative Okimoto,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Still in opposition.
please proceed.
I'd just like to clarify that being pro-life has and will never propagate hatred towards anyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Representative Tam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in support. And I would like to have the comments from the representative from Salt Lake inserted into the journal as if it were my own.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Lopresti.
in support, same request.
So ordered. Representative Peruso.
In support, same request.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition.
Please proceed.
If I could also have permission to insert written comments into the journal.
So ordered.
I wasn't going to speak, but I thought I'd just say a few words. I often look at this issue from a bit of a different lens. And as we move forward looking at different pieces of legislation, and now I know we're working on some of these issues, but I'd like to make the point that I feel women's need for equality is not necessarily increased access to abortion, but to be given what they need to survive financially and socially as mothers. And to me, that means inexpensive and readily available childcare. It's a workplace that provides for the needs of the mother, whether that's flexible scheduling, maternity leave, paid family leave, telework, and a state support to really help reintegrate women back into the workplace. And I felt like that was a lens that needed to be shared, and something, like I said, I know we're working on, but we need to be working on it much more in order to provide women, not telling them that they only have one option, but that there are so many options for them to succeed, both in their careers or in school, as well as being a mother. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lowen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support, I'd like to adopt the words of the representative from Moanalua.
So ordered.
And, I'm also unapologetically pro-choice, but I will point out this bill is about equity for rural areas and access to health care and access to a procedure that is legal in the state of Hawaii, and that's not what we're here debating today. This is about providing access, particularly for rural areas that are underserved.
All right, is there further discussion on 910? Okay, if not, 913. Representative Tokioka.
Thank you, Speaker. In opposition?
Please proceed.
And I'll make this as short as I can. I understand and I respect the introducer and the author of the bill, but to look at the many difficult choices that we have to make because of the budget restraints that is in front of us, this, in my opinion, shouldn't be one of them. On this very same floor, under the guidance of former Representatives Ito and Takai, we did the ceremony for the fallen soldiers. And I think everyone who was here at that time was extremely proud of being an American, being a part of this body, and being able to support the men and women who lost their lives fighting for this country. And it was right here on our own floor. So to do this, the emails that I got from my veterans and people on Kauai were very, very disappointed to see what was happening. And I again say that I understand the budget constraints, but it just takes away a lot of what we have already done to honor our veterans and our soldiers. We hear stories from General Hara of the things that he dealt with in Afghanistan, and many others who come back too, that have fought wars and supported their country. So for those reasons and many others, Speaker, I'm in opposition, and I, again, hope that everyone who introduced this or had a part of this understands why I'm saying what I say, because those days when we did have those ceremonies, I'm sure everyone who was here had tears, especially the first time that it happened. So thank you for this opportunity.
All right, is there further discussion on 913? Representative Ward.
Speaker, in opposition.
Please proceed.
Believe it or not, Speaker, there used to be a Veterans Caucus in the House of Representatives. Some of us were active, some were inactive. So it's inactive, but on the basis of that, we spoke for the veterans in the state of Hawaii. So on that basis, I would say this is misplaced savings, if there is savings. In fact, I think it puts the legislature in a bad light vis-a-vis the fact that we are the highest per capita veteran state in the nation. And for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I also ask that the gentleman from Kauai's comments be inserted in the journal as my own. And if we want to be fiscally responsible, I think we should take it out on a different tack and a different way of doing it than this one. Thank you, Speaker.
All right, so ordered on the remarks. Representative Tam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
Please proceed.
I believe that I speak for everyone when I say that we have the deepest appreciation for our men and women in uniform, and this bill is not an attack on them, nor is it to undermine their work. The purpose of this bill is to ensure that the Hawaii Department of Transportation is properly funded so that the people of Hawaii, including the military, can drive on the best roads we can offer. According to the testimony offered by the Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, the total amount of transportation funding gained by this bill could result in $2 million to $9 million each year. The Department of Transportation has seen a large reduction of funds since the result of COVID-19. Less people are driving, so less fuel tax money is coming in. Less planes are landing, meaning less landing fees. Less harbor fees because no cruise ships are coming in. All this while our infrastructure continues to crumble because of the heavy rains that we are seeing right now. By passing this bill, we will provide some much needed funding so that our roads, so the legislature can avoid raising fuel taxes on everyone else. The Tax Foundation also mentioned in their testimony that exemptions on an individual's age or status is technically poor tax policy. It results in a large reduction of funds, and oftentimes those funds are picked up by everyone else. So while a military member will have some relief because of the exemption, a single mother making minimum wage would have their taxes raised in order to make up for the lost revenue. For these reasons, I would also like to point out that this bill is about 249, 6.5 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, and it does not include our veterans. Our veterans currently right now are not exempt, meaning they pay the vehicle weight tax. So for these reasons, I'm in support of the bill.
Representative McDermott.
Mr. Speaker, in opposition.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, have you ever spent Christmas halfway around the world in sand up to your butt and you're all by yourself? Well, that's what these kids do. And while they're here, while they're deployed, we're going to tell them, you know what? Instead of paying the reduced rate, you're going to pay the full freight, because that's the least we can do for you. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe this thing is going to become law, to be quite frank with you. If it passes the House and goes to the Senate, I'm pretty sure the governor would get a call to at least to veto it from the PACOM, Indo-Pacific Command up there, because this is a real slap in the face to the one industry we have going right now that supports us. So I just think it's bad. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Peruso.
I rise in strong support.
Please proceed.
I support this measure on the basis of equity. I'm sure that most members of the House are aware that active service members do not generally, by and large, pay income taxes in the state of Hawaii, because if they declare residency in another state in which they do not have to pay income tax, they are able to not pay income tax at all. So most military members do that. And I want to say that this is one small way we're giving them an opportunity, one small way in which they can contribute to the common good and support our community, support our public schools, support our public tax base. Mahalo.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, second time in opposition.
Please proceed.
Two factors, Mr. Speaker. We have two golden goose economic drivers. One is tourism, and one is federal spending. This gets to the heart of federal spending, and it kind of nibbles a bit away from that, Mr. Speaker. Also, people who are pleading for the potholes to be filled, please understand that in the history of this body, some 10 years ago, we raided the pothole fund. We took the money, we used it in the general fund, and we have never recovered since then. So this body is directly responsible for why we have these kind of grabs for money for even our veterans and our military people who are heretofore exempt. So please know, historically, we are part of the culpability of why we have a problem with our roads. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Aquino.
WR, please, written comments to the journal.
So ordered. Representative Decoit.
Opposition,
Please.
Mr. Speaker, and I would like to adopt the words of the representative from Kauai as if they were my own.
So ordered.
And just brief comment, if this is a little of what our veterans have to sacrifice, they are our front line. When we sacrifice our families and go to war and defend our country, I would think that if this is such a little contribution to be made back to the state of Hawaii in funds, I would think that it should be a give at this point. And that's why I'm in strong opposition. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Representative Tam.
Mr. Speaker, in support, and I just want to reiterate that this is not about veterans. Veterans pay the vehicle weight tax, so I would advise members to not reference veterans at all, as this does a disservice to them. I would also like to remind the Minority Leader Emeritus that in 2017 to 2018, the Department of Transportation repaved the Kalani'anaole Highway, and that benefits a lot of Hawaii Kai residents living in Hawaii Kai and working in town.
Representative Tokioka.
Second time in opposition.
Please proceed.
I realize that this bill doesn't affect veterans, and I was referring to the people that were contacting me who were veterans. And whenever a bill like this comes up, it's mainly the veterans that call my office or call me. And I'd also like to ask permission to insert additional comments into the journal, Speaker.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative McDermott.
Speaker, I don't know if I asked last time to have comments put in the journal, but I would like comments in opposition.
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there further discussion on this measure?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition.
Please proceed.
Brief comment. First, may I please adopt the words of the representative from Lihui into the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I do very much appreciate the comments made by the introducer of this bill and his passion. I think I take a different perspective because in 2008, I was the vice chair of the then committee that was called Public Safety and Military Affairs. And it was then the chair, Representative Cindy Evans, and myself who introduced this bill on behalf of our former colleague, Representative Mark Takai. And this bill actually started off as an exemption for any active National Guardsman or woman would be able to get one vehicle registration fee waived. And it became, when we looked at the amount of money that it would affect the State Highway Fund, we then decided to somewhat morph it throughout the process, and it became one vehicle for an active National Guardsman or woman for one vehicle in their family. And you have to understand, at that time, that was when we were at active war in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And many of our local men and women who are active National Guardsmen and women were deployed. And so Representative Takai had come to Representative Evans and myself and said, this is the right thing to do. And so while all of you may have a different perspective, for which I very much appreciate, this is a very personal bill for me because our former Congressman, Mark Takai, who is many of our friends, this is a personal bill he asked for us to pass because of what we were going through at that time. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I remain in strong opposition to this measure. Thank you.
All right, Representative Ono.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in support.
Please proceed.
While I've also had the honor of sitting rotations, honoring our service members, I've also had the honor of serving with one of our former colleagues, former Congressman and former House member Takai. It is a painful measure that I do put forward in support. The reason why, very quickly, is just I think the circumstances of this year and the circumstances that faced our state departments and many of our public employee friends are very dire. As a result, I don't believe this bill would have much of a shot a year ago, and I don't think this bill will have much of a shot in a couple years. But I just want to remind you and the members, the circumstances with which we're under are very unique, and I think this bill deserves consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, is there further discussion on this measure? If not, 914. Next page, 916. Representative Okimoto.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 917. Representative Okimoto.
Reservations, please.
So ordered.
Brief comment.
Please proceed.
I would just like to say I appreciate the intent of this bill, Mr. Speaker, as all of our keiki should feel safe at school. However, as stated in the testimony from the Department of Education, these rules already exist, thus making this measure duplicative. If codified into law, my concern is that it also runs the risk of hamstringing the DOE from making changes to the definitions of the terms bullying, cyberbullying, and harassment when deemed necessary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there further discussion? If not, 920. Representative McDermott. 922. Next page, 923. 924. 925. 926. Next page, 931. 932. 936. 937. Representative Okimoto.
With reservations, Mr. Speaker. and
So
brief
ordered.
comment. There is a similar Senate version of this bill that establishes the Office of Aerospace Development in the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation instead of abolishing the OAD completely, which allows us to continue discussions and methods of diversifying our economy through the aerospace sector. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, in strong opposition.
Please proceed.
Notwithstanding what the Senate may be doing, I think we're taking a step backward by doing this, Mr. Speaker. I earlier spoke on the need for the state of Hawaii to get more creative, innovative, more entrepreneurial. Well, this takes a giant leap backwards because it takes away basically what's on the forefront of technology and aerospace. All of you do Amazon. Well, your delivery is going to be by a UAV, which we now are opting out of in this particular bill. We're basically canceling all the legislation we did to create keeping up with the rest of America for aerospace and for high technology. I think it's rather shameful to know that we have the most strategic position for aerospace tourism. We have the most strategic position for shooting of breadbasket, or how would you say, satellites that are as small as a loaf of bread. We have undermined this by saying, well, we don't want anything to do with it. Now, I know, and I'm also grateful to the Chair of Finance who said, hey, we are not really getting rid of all of it. We are putting it into the University of Hawaii Hilo, which is good. We have Pisces. Pisces is the Pacific Islands Space Center, et cetera. But it's still not the same as the Office of Aerospace Development to mainstream us into the 22nd century, 23rd and beyond. Mr. Speaker, as co-chair of the Small Business Caucus, I'm very disappointed that we are so not anti-business, we are so apathetic to entrepreneurial, creative, innovative things. And as I said earlier, I'm really disappointed that our DBED, our engine of our economy, hasn't put in one pro-business bill in this session when the businesses are hurting the most. For those, Mr. Speaker, reasons, I'm really sad by a bill like this. Hopefully something will happen with Hilo. But the fact is, you know, they used to fly over Hawaii, and now with these other things that are going on, we are going to be a forgotten area in the Pacific because we haven't adjusted. We think that we're so smart, we live off of our good looks, but we're not using our brains. We've got to get more entrepreneurial, we got to get more creative, we got to get more innovative, and we got to stop throwing these things under the wayside. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there further discussion on 937? Representative Quinlan.
In support, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
There is just so much to unpack, so many inaccuracies in one long run-on sentence. How do we take a step back from nothing? The Office of Aerospace Development is defunct and has been defunct for quite some time. There's nobody working in there. And after 15 years of having OAD and having Pisces, funding these positions, funding their research, we have nothing to show for it. We have no projects, we have no spaceport, we're not testing any drones here. And that's not OAD's fault, necessarily, or the fault of Pisces. It's the result of a number of different factors. But I think to suggest that the mere existence of a few positions in a division of DBED would make or break the aerospace industry in Hawaii is disingenuous. And anyways, I don't want to get myself in trouble. That's it. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ward.
Speaker, for the good representative from the North Shore, he also accusing me of what he himself.
He's still in
is
opposition?
missing. Oh, of course, in
Please
opposition.
proceed.
The reason why it never went anywhere, Mr. Speaker, is because we never funded it. We never funded the positions. That's number one. Literally, for the last 10 years, I mentioned Mr. Christofouli, who is very aggressively, very strongly mentioning that, you know, if we're going to compete with the rest of the nation, we got to put some skin in the game, is his term. So we've never funded this. So it's kind of died from a neglect. And number two, we never responded to the private sector gestures of Elon Musk and the other Virgin Galactic who wanted to come here, but we kind of played, as I said earlier, we live on our good looks, we don't use our brains. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a death of neglect. This is the death of bureaucratic nonsense, and from this body not picking it up and running with it and being creative and innovative, I put the onus of our, unfortunately, killing off of this. This is a job creator, now it's a job killer, the way that this bill is fit. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I will remain in opposition.
Representative McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the one who created Pisces, I feel I need to step up and say something, and I stand in support of this measure.
Please proceed.
Thus, OAD, Jim did a great job. He tried to use it as a way to bring minds from around the world to Hawaii to discuss things, to have conferences on aerospace. But there was a frustration, Mr. Speaker, of the private sector that these meetings, while well-intended, were just that, meetings, think groups, work tanks. No real projects were being engaged in. The opportunity of our location of having an analog center here in Hawaii wasn't being realized, which is why we created Pisces. And the chair of finance, I thank her, because all those years, contrary, let the record reflect, she funded those positions and funded the programs, some of which include the basaltic concrete project, which has undergone in Hilo, as well as other projects which have brought the University of Hawaii and other universities to the Big Island to take advantage of these partnerships, strategic partnerships. You have to evolve, Mr. Speaker, to the 21st century, and Pisces was trying to do that. Jim did a great job, but even then, there was concern and issues from the private sector of the efficacy of OAD. To refocus this back into Pisces and back into the university is a good thing in moving forward to try to really engage that private sector partnership for our strategic location. So I want to thank both the Chair of Finance for her previous support. I also want to thank the Chair of Economic Development for continuing to demand results of these projects and programs. And so with that, I stand in support of the measure. Thank you.
Representative Quillen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Still in support, and may I have the words of the Chair of Government Reform entered into the record as if they were my own.
So ordered.
And I'd just like to briefly point out that my colleague from Hawaii Kai often rails against bureaucracy in this chamber. and at the same time speaks glowingly of the private sector. So it confuses me when, in this case, his answer to our lack of an aerospace industry seems to be keeping more bureaucrats employed permanently. Thank you.
Representative Luke,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, in support.
please proceed.
One of the things I wanted to point out was that there was some incorrect statement about not funding Office of Aerospace. Even the position of the executive director has been funded and continues to be funded, which will be removed in this bill, only because the position has now been filled by the former Department of Labor director, and as soon as the former labor director became the head of Office of Aerospace, DBED quickly reassigned that individual to do workforce development. I think this is an example of legislative intent in trying to work with the administration and the executive to get progress in some of these economic efforts, but at some point in time after 10, 15 years, if the executive still continues to struggle, it is really the opportunity for the legislature to re-examine, as opposed to continuing to fund a program that has really struggled and only has succeeded only on those parts like Pisces and unmanned aerial where the legislature got involved. Other than that, other than going through NASA trade shows and other type of similar trade outfits, Office of Aerospace has not developed to the full potential that it could have. And this is an example of perhaps sometimes government should stay out of the way as opposed to trying to control every step of the way. What do we have as far as innovation and technology in this state? It really is in the University of Hawaii, and that's why we feel that maybe it is time, after giving DBED 15 years to succeed in this program, if they have not been able to do so, it is time for us to restructure and re-examine and have it be placed in an area where they can succeed, as opposed to continuing to wish that this program will succeed under the executive, where they have not really completely supported or envisioned the full potential. So thank you very much.
All right, is there further discussion on this measure? Representative Ward spoke 3 times.
Yes, comments
2
to
times.
the journal. Just comments to the journal, if I may.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, next page, 941. Representative Ganadin,
In strong support, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the original home mortgage interest deduction in the United States was created to incentivize home ownership. It has been twisted in years to allow for the rich to get richer and for the poor to become poorer. As it is currently structured, it increases inequality and contributes to housing unaffordability. I'd like to note for the members that the housing price of the average home here on Oahu is up 3% this year during the pandemic to $814,000. In its testimony before the first committee, the Department of Transportation noted that an increase to the general fund, if we were to enact this bill, would be $9.2 million. Noting the increase in housing here on the island of Oahu, I think that might be a bit conservative.
Okay, is there further discussion? If not, 942. Representative Ward.
Speaker, 942, I am in opposition, and that's the one I wanted to make sure was not on the consent calendar. So I can speak about this as the city and county administered Hanauma Bay, of which all of us have been a visitor or a participant in. And the fee that they collect is what this bill is about, the MLCD. The bill is aimed specifically and only at Hanauma Bay, and its aim is to get the money from the city's Hanauma Bay Fund to spend throughout the state instead of only at Hanauma Bay, and in violation of 2 federal court orders governing the use of the Hanauma Bay Fund. Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is this is a cash cow. The state has discovered it. The state works on the ocean side of it. The city runs it in the administrative land side. And because it has been so prosperous, And I know there's a grab for money wherever and however it can be found, but this is not the place. This is my district. This is a place that needs the money to keep it pristine, to keep it operational, to keep it as it is one of the gems of all of the world, if you will, to not only visitors, but to local people alike. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, and some people say, well, the Friends of Hanauma Bay gave written testimony in the Finance Committee, and they were all for it. Well, I just spoke to the president this morning, and she said the verbal testimony, she said, was to pull back that positive note on this bill, 1027, and to know negatively that now her eyes, the Hanauma Bay Friends, have their eyes open, and they know that this is bad because it's another grab for what otherwise is for the maintenance and the well-being of Hanauma Bay operationally. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, please know that this is not a good bill. It's a step backwards, and it's a grab of money from my district. Thank you.
Representative Tarnas.
Thank you. In support, brief comments.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I just want to note for members that in the Water and Land Committee, we specifically amended the bill to address the concerns of the City and County of Honolulu to ensure that this would not be in conflict with the two court cases that the previous speaker referred to. And so the measure as amended should be able to be adopted without any concern. Thank you.
All right, is there further discussion on this measure? If not, 943, 944. Is there any discussion on this or any other measure? If not, we will take the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 25, STANCOM report number 910, HB number 576 HG3, the following vote no. Aquino, Cullen, Eli, Kong. STANCOM report number 913, HB number 29 HD2, the following vote no. Branco, Decoit, Eli, Kong, Ilagan, Tokioka, Woodson, Yamane. On page 27, STANCOM report number 923, HB number 803 HD1, Kong votes no. On page 29, STANCOM report number 943, HB number 497 HD1, the following vote no. Eli, Capella, Martin, Peruso, Tam. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 25, SCR 902, HB 474, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 910, HB 576, HD3, the Minority Caucus votes no. SCR 913, HB 290, HD2, Representatives McDermott, Okimoto, and Ward vote no. SCR 914, HB 1352, HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. On page 26, SCR 916, HB 11 HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 920, HB 558 HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 922, HB 327 HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. On page 27, SCR 923, HB 803 HD1, Representatives McDermott and Okimoto vote no. On SCR 924, HB 1092 HD1, Representatives McDermott and Ward vote no. On page 28, SCR 931, HB 160 HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 932, HB 161, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 936, HB 683, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 937, HB 862, HD2, Representative Ward votes no. And on page 29, SCR 941, HB 1388, HD1, Representatives McDermott, Okimoto, and Ward vote no. SCR 942, HB 1027, HD2, Representatives McDermott and Ward vote no. SCR 944, HB 601, HD2, Representative McDermott votes no.
All right, for the remote members, are there any no votes?
Mr. Speaker?
Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please have the clerk register a no vote for me on SCR 910 and SCR 913.
Okay, so ordered. With additional no votes from the remote members. Okay, if not, Representative McKelvey.
Yes, I apologize, Mr. Speaker. This was the one I was supposed to do the green slip on. I need a no vote on Stancom Report 943, and I'll submit my green slip accordingly. Thank you.
943, so ordered. Members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said measures passed third reading. Members, let's take a 5-minute recess. All right, members, we're on page 30. The following measures will be deferred one legislative day. SCR number 954, House Bill number 1144, House Draft 2. It's on page 31. And on page 32, SCR number 960, House Bill number 1314, House Draft 2. Representative Belatti.
Mr. Speaker, with the exception of HSCR numbers 954 and 960, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 30 through 32 and that the accompanying House bills as may be amended pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Is there any discussion beginning with SCR 945? Representative Matayoshi.
With reservations, permission to insert written comments.
So ordered. Okay, 948. Representative Onishi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition?
Please proceed.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, this is another veiled attempt for DLNR to try to cover up the mismanagement of Banyan Drive. For many years, Banyan Drive has been mismanaged. The properties on Banyan Drive have been left to disrepair, and it now requires the removal of some of the structures, some of the hotels that formerly existed in Banyan Drive. And the DLNR has been trying to come to the state to have the state pay for that removal in order for them to do the development of Banyan Drive. Obviously, this the removal of these buildings, condemned buildings, should be part of the full development plan, and it shouldn't be costing the people of Hawaii in order to take those buildings down and benefit the developer. In this particular case, the restructuring of the lease or the forgiveness of lease rent to the developer is in essence the state and the people of Hawaii paying for what the developer should be able to do with the permission, for the permission of developing that property. So I stand in strong opposition.
Representative Peruso.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Todd.
Thank you, Speaker. In opposition.
Please proceed.
I just have brief comments, and I'd also like the words from the representative from South Hilo adopted as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Thank you. Just to kind of echo some of those sentiments, if this area, even though this has statewide applicability, it's really designed specifically for an area in my district that everyone is very tired of hearing about, so I'll be brief. The dollar figure in question is about $6 million, and I think it's worth noting that the actual value of this property in terms of potential lease revenue would be probably only in the order of $100,000 a year, give or take. So you'd really be paying a developer to take this off of your hands in a sense, and they may in effect have 30, maybe even 50 years of free, a free lease of this land for tearing down a building that has already been, should never have gotten into this condition in the first place had this area been managed better. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? Representative Sayama.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Holt.
Thank you, Speaker. With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Martin.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Gates.
With reservation.
So ordered. Representative Quinlan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Iligan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Nakamura.
With reservations.
So ordered. Representative Hashimoto.
Reservation, Speaker.
So ordered. Representative McKelvey.
Same request, please.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, 951, 951, 952. Representative Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations.
So ordered.
brief comment. I'm unapologetically pro-Hawaiian. I appreciate the Sovereign Council of Hawaiian Homestead Association putting forth these measures, but as highlighted in the testimony by the department, as I read before, the amendments proposed are unnecessary and propose to elevate the interests of lessees and homestead associations over the interests of applicants on the wait list. And we have over 28,000 members on the wait list, so for those reasons, I'm with reservations.
Representative Okimoto.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Bronco.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Decoy.
Reservations, permission to insert comments to the journal.
So ordered. Representative Todd.
Thank you. Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Gates.
Reservation.
So ordered. Representative Quinlan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Iligan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Sayama.
Reservations, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. So further discussion? If not, next
Speaker?
page.
Mr.
Representative Har
Same request, reservations, please.
on 952, so ordered. Further discussion? If not, next page, 953. Representative Ward.
Speaker, with reservations, but I'm still in support of it, with degrees of it. First, I want to thank the West Side author of this bill. This is essentially a step forward for the Hawaiian Homes Commission to modernize their lease. But, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't probably go far enough because the number of Hawaiians who have lived and died in a state of transgenerational trauma, waiting for a place to call home in their homeland, and I'm going to say it, borders on criminal. Whatever excuses might spring from the state after 100 years of failed management of this trust responsibility is disturbingly clear, and there's no end in the sight. The governance model of DHHL from the get-go has been one of perpetuating government dependency, and that continues till now, year after year after year. The state of Hawaii signed off on the trust responsibility of the Homestead Act of 1920 as a condition of statehood in 1959. So let's be clear, the ultimate responsibility lies in the lap of the governor and the Hawaii State Legislature. If after 100 years of profoundly egregious mismanagement of a fundamental trust, you would think that the leaders of the state would stop looking at DHHL to come up with solutions which they seem incapable of doing. The point is the model is broken. The model has to change. House Bill 1124, HD1, offers a legitimate path to resolving the breach of trust. What is lacking, Mr. Speaker, clearly is the political will and the courage and determination to right this wrong. House Bill 1124 will take us to the well, but it won't force us to drink. It's a good beginning. It's piecemeal. It's something that we need to do, looking at the lease the way the Bishop Estate has written leases and put them forth. There's actually value to it when you have a 99-year lease. Heretofore, if you have a Hawaiian Homes lease, all you get is what is in the construction or the reconstruction rebuilding price. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a definite step forward. And I note that the effective date is 2050, and one of my Hawaiian colleagues said, yes, and all the 28,000 on the wait list will be dead by then because there's more people on the wait list that are dying than are getting homes. After 100 years, only 9,800, maybe 10,000 leases at the most, which means, Mr. Speaker, we've built 100 years for the Hawaiians. For 100 years, we've built 100 houses per year. I know a developer who could do that in a number of months, Mr. Speaker. We are really negligent, and as it said in the beginning, this borders on criminality. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, it's okay, but not so okay.
Representative Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With reservations?
Please proceed.
And I appreciate the passion that the previous speaker has for DHHL and the Hawaiians. And, you know, like I said, thank you to the Shaw for putting this bill forth. I wish it was as simple as this. Over the interim, our former colleague and the current chair of the Senate Health Committee looked into these issues to require appraisals improvements to identify the replacement costs or the leasehold market value. The problem is that DHHO homestead leases are not like any other properties in Hawaii. And, as stated in the testimony from the department, the term leasehold is and refers to a lessee's right to exclusive use and possession of attractive DHHO land for a term of years. DHHO leaseholds can only be owned by qualified beneficiaries. Consequently, the market for DHHO leaseholds is limited by statute. There's also another section in this bill which would again put homesteads and current homesteaders ahead of those on the wait list. Again, in the testimony from the department, it says authorizing second position loans could require additional sources of loan financing to existing lessees, while nearly 3 times that number are awaiting a lease and financing for their homestead award. For those reasons, I'm with reservations, Speaker.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, with reservations.
So ordered. Representative Bronco.
With reservation.
Representative Nakamura's reservation. So ordered. Representative Bronco.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Okimoto.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Quinlan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Further discussion. Representative DeCoit.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Matsumoto.
Reservations.
So ordered.
Speaker.
Representative Matsuyoshi.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Tokioka.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Gates.
Reservation.
So ordered. Representative Iligan.
Reservations.
So ordered. Representative Hashimoto.
Reservation, Speaker.
So ordered. Further discussion.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Har.
reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Ward.
Second time with reservations, but mild support, Mr. Speaker. One of the caveats, obviously, is that if one of the leases is to pass to another person, it has to be Hawaiian, has to be 50% or 25% if it's the children. That limits the number of potential buyers. But for those who follow the numbers locally as well as on the mainland as well as in the world, there's probably 500,000 Hawaiians. So that is something that administratively can be taken care of. The governor probably could do it. The Department of the Interior ask for innovative, creative things, of which this body, as with this bill, can introduce creative, innovative ways. And this is a creative, innovative way of getting out of the doldrums of 100 houses every year for 100 years and never fulfilling what otherwise is, to me, a moral imperative to put the Hawaiians back on the land. I repeat, a moral imperative to put the Hawaiians back on the land, which was promised 100 years ago. Thank you, Speaker.
Is there further discussion on this measure? If not, 955, 957. Representative Okimoto.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative DeCoit.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Tokioka.
Reservation.
So ordered. Further discussion? Representative McKelvey.
Same request, thank you.
So ordered.
Anybody here?
Representative Lopresti.
Oh, I've been trying to talk for long. With reservations, we can go back to SDR 945 as reservations.
Are you requesting reservations on 957?
Actually, I am, but also at the appropriate time, we can go back to SDR 945.
Could you repeat that? The audio is not clear.
Yeah. Yes, reservations on this measure, and at the appropriate time, we can go back to SDR 945 as reservations.
Sorry, it's still not clear. Okay, we'll go back to 945, but finish 957 first. 957. Okay, if not, we'll go back to 945. Representative Lopresti.
Reservations?
So ordered.
Oh, also on 957, I had reservations. My audio, I'm sorry, I've been trying to talk for a while.
Okay, and also reservations on 957. So ordered. So further discussion on 957. If not, next page, 958. Any discussion? Representative Okimoto.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Further, Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Burt Kobayashi.
Mr. Speaker, support with reservations and
So ordered.
a few comments. After our majority caucus I was given some dollar numbers, and I'd like to share them with you. The Master Settlement Agreement is one of the most lucrative law cases that have come to the support of state finances. Over the past 20 years, over approximately $1 billion has gone into the Tobacco Trust Fund, not to count the billions in addition that have gone to the General Fund, the Department of Health, Health Prevention Fund, the UH School of Medicine. In the past 20 years, approximately $45 million have been earned in interest income through the Hawaii Community Foundation for the Tobacco Trust Fund. This is, depending on your perspective, a little bit of money or a lot. I would suggest that given that there would have been zero interest income had the money gone into the general fund, that this is a lot of money. Second dollar item has to do with the rumor that $1 million from the Tobacco Trust Fund went to support the Beaky Bike car rental program of the city and county. In fact, while there was $1 million given to Beaky Bikes by the state, it came not from the Tobacco Trust Fund, but from the pot of money that went to Department of Health, Health Prevention. The third item is that I am told that while this program, the Tobacco Control Program, will be supported by general funds, the general fund support is $1 million less than what is currently available. So for these reasons and others, I would like to suggest that we look at this program more closely as this bill proceeds. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion on this measure? Representative Pruso.
Well, I appreciate the intent of this measure to move special funds into the general funds, and I definitely support that approach. I still do have reservations about this particular bill.
Okay, thank you. Representative Tam.
With reservations, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Representative Nakamura.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Ward.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Ganadin.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to change my no vote to a with reservations.
So ordered.
I'd like the words of the speaker who spoke 4 times previously to be entered into my own. Also noting, hoping that we can clarify in future iterations of this bill the decoupling of the financing of the cost of construction for the University Health and Wellness Center from the need to support tobacco cessation in communities like the one I represent. Thank you.
Representative Capella.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Is there further discussion on this or any other measure? If not, we'll be taking the vote. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, on the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 30, Stancom report number 948, HB number 1012, HD1, following vote no. Capella, Onishi, Todd. On page 31, Stancom report number 953, HB number 1124, HD1, Ganadin votes no. Stancom report number 957, HB number 321, HD1, Capella votes no. On page 32, Stancom report number 958, HB number 1296, HD1, the following vote no. Decoit, Ilagan, Takumi, Tokioka. Thank you.
Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 30, SCR 951, HB 1023, HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. On page 31, SCR 955, HB 1276, Representative McDermott votes no. SCR 957, HB 321, HD1, Representative Ward votes no. On page 32, SCR 958, HB 1296, HD1, Representative McDermott votes no. On SCR 743, HB 221, HD1.
So
Sorry, did I
that's the
miss one?
next motion.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
For the remote members, are there any no votes?
Mr. Speaker?
Representative Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please have the clerk register a no vote for me on SCR 958, House Bill 1296, HD1.
Okay, so ordered on 958. Are there additional no votes from remote members? Okay, if not, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, if so, said measures pass third reading. Members, are on item 6B on page 32. The following measures will be deferred one legislative day. House Bill number 961, House Draft 1 on page 32. And on page 35, House Bill number 432, House Draft 1. Representative Belatti.
Mr. Speaker, with the exception of House Bill numbers 961 HD1 and 432 HD1, I move that the House bills listed on pages 32 through 35 pass third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Right, is there any discussion beginning with House Bill number 221 on page 32? 221. Representative Takumi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In opposition.
Please proceed.
You know, Mr. Speaker, as your CPC Chair Emeritus, I got a little familiarity with condominium issues. On this one, it's well intended, but there's one big unintended consequence. By putting in language that says that no condominium association employee can solicit proxies, it will result in most, if not all, condominiums not being able to achieve quorum. As you know, many condominiums have a very difficult time achieving quorum, particularly those condominiums where the majority of the owners are not even living in the state. So usually the board directs the community association employee to get votes. And how do they do that? Usually they do a mailing, because as you know, boards are all volunteers, and to do a mailing of 2, 3, 4, 500 unit owners is very time consuming. And so that's what they pay condo associations to do. Secondly, I've known instances where in order to get proxy votes, the employees would literally go door to door in that condo, knocking on the doors, asking if they can fill out the proxy form. Under this bill, that would not be allowed. So if the intent is to paralyze boards and not get proxies and not achieve quorum, this bill would achieve that purpose. I'm hopeful with a 9-word change, 9 words added to this bill, you can take care of this unintended consequence and also ensure that association employees are not engaged in something nefarious and trying to get proxies for their own ends. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay,
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Presti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have reservations with comments.
Please proceed.
I'd like the words of the previous speaker entered into the record as if they're my own.
So ordered.
Although I was not CPC Chair Emeritus. I have reservations for similar reasons, but also slightly different. I'd like to see, and the reason I'm a reservation and not a no, is I'd like to see the language that was removed put back in. As a president of my association, it is difficult to achieve quorum sometimes, but I think one of the rationales behind the idea to not allow people to give a proxy to the board as a whole is because sometimes there's disagreement in the community as to what the board is doing, and it's hard to replace the board when you give a proxy and that proxy is almost always given to the board as a whole. And if you want to change something, you can't do that and give a proxy. So the part that was removed is the part that should be kept, in my opinion. The universal language that says that the association managers cannot solicit the proxy seems a bit overbroad. If the intent is to limit something nefarious, I think that's fixable in the bill. But we can't hamstring boards from having the people that they pay to help manage their associations to help do the job. And so that's why I'm reservations, because I think we can still fix it. Thank you.
All right, is there further discussion? Representative Johansson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
Please proceed.
And I want to start off by saying I appreciate the comments actually from the representative from Pearl City, and I agree. I think his comments are helpful as it moves over to the Senate in providing some clarification, because I too agree that the intent here is to try to ensure that nothing nefarious is happening from the various employees who have a vested interest and sometimes might actually have a conflict of interest in the manner in which they pursue the solicitation of proxies. For most members, including myself, who are getting an education in this, the proxies are important because this is a governance structure that governs the condominium associations, and this is how common area improvements are done, policies are made. So I think those are very good comments that I take to heart. I will say the restoration of the portion of the bill that I deleted would have achieved exactly what the representative from Pearl City and myself are concerned about, which is the inability to actually govern a condo association. These proxies are important, and the ability to delegate them to the board is a necessary part of condo association government. Thank you very much.
Is there further discussion on this measure? Okay, for not,
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lopresti.
Second time, still on reservation.
Please proceed.
Thank you. By reinserting that language, you still very much have the ability to have the governance structure function. There are many options of what to do with a proxy. You can give it to your neighbor, you can give it to an individual member. There's lots of options. Just giving it, the default tends to be only giving it to the board to use. And that is where, in my experience, a lot of the problems come. When people think that something nefarious is being done on a board, or they don't like the way the board is making decisions, by having the option to have the proxies given to somebody else, you still have governance structure. But by removing the option to, that sometimes these boards put out calls for proxies, and the only real option that's given to them is that they can give the proxy to us, the board, if I'm speaking as a board member. And that's not the only possibility. There are many possibilities. And so I just wanted to correct that. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion? If not, we're on the next page, HB number 458. Representative Matayoshi.
With reservations.
So ordered. HB number 1107. HB number 171. HB number 887. Next page, HB 1326. Representative Capella.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Tokioka.
Reservations.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Lopresti.
At the appropriate time, could we go to HB 1107?
Yes, let's finish HB 1326. Any discussion? If not, we'll go back to HB 1107. Representative Lopresti.
Reservations, thank you.
So ordered. Okay, we're back on page 34, HB number 248. Any discussion? Representative Ward.
With reservations, Speaker.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, interestingly, marriage is now, just as the bill indicates, a personal relationship. I think this lessens the meaning of marriage. It kind of cheapens it, if you will. And anybody and everybody can now marry anyone. I'm not sure. Interestingly, the first part of the bill says you got to pay a license fee. So is this a way of getting money by actually diluting actually what vows are, which we hopefully take seriously nowadays, and this thing kind of cheapens it. Thank you, Speaker.
Is there further discussion? If not, HB 818, HB 169. Next page, HB 170, HB 172. Representative Ganadin.
Mr. Speaker, may we re-refer to HB 169?
Okay, let's finish 172. 172. Representative Capella.
With reservations, please.
So ordered. Further discussion? If not, we'll go back to 169. Representative Ganadin.
Mr. Speaker, registering a no vote.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, as noting the testimony of the Office of the Public Defender, this would criminalize some of the very common behavior of minors in our community in making statements online. In 2012, this legislative body made great strides to change the way that the state handles juvenile felonies. I think this is a step in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion on this measure or any other measure? Representative Tokioka.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I erred. Can we go back to Stancom Committee Report 758, HB 1326, on the top of the page, 34.
We already took the vote on that measure. On page 30?
34.
Oh, 34.
Page that we're on now.
Okay, let's go back to 758, page 34.
Yes, so HB 1326, I stood up in error and said with reservations. I'm a no vote. Sorry about that, Speaker.
So no
and
vote?
I apologize to the floor leader as well.
So no vote. So
yes,
ordered.
and Speaker, at the appropriate time, can we go back to HB 181 on the same page? 818, sorry.
All right, Representative Tokioka on 818.
Yes, with reservations. Thank you.
So ordered. All right, members, is there any discussion on this measure or any other measure? For the remote members, are there any no votes? Okay, have all votes been cast? Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 32, HB number 221 HD1, Stancom report number 743. Representative Takumi votes no. On page 34, HB number 1326 HD1, Stancom report number 758. The following vote no: Decoit, Dale Kobayashi, Kong, Peruso, and Tokioka. On HB number 818 HD1, Stancom report number 761, the following vote no: Capella, Dale Kobayashi, Peruso. On HB number 169 HD1, Stancom report number 762, the following vote no: Ganadin, Capella, Peruso, Tam. On page 35, HB number 170 HD1, Stancom report number 763, the following vote no: Capella, McKelvey, Peruso. And on HB number 172 HD1, Stancom report number 765, McKelvey votes no. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Matsumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 32, HB 221 HD1 SCR 743, Representative McDermott votes no. On page 34, HB 1326 HD1 SCR 758, Representatives Matsumoto and Okimoto vote no. On HB 248 HD1 SCR 760, Representative McDermott votes no.
Okay, for remote members, are there any no votes on these measures? If not, members, have all votes been cast? Okay, said measures passed third reading. For an item 7, introduction of resolutions, Mr. Clerk. Are there any resolutions for action?
Mr. Speaker, there are no resolutions for action. May all others be referred to print.
So ordered. We're on item 8. Members, are there any announcements? Representative Okimoto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to extend an invitation to all those who would like to participate in the fellowship luncheon with myself and Representative Kong as the host this time. Please look out for an email that will be coming from our offices. We are scheduled to have it on Thursday, March 11, directly following floor session. So please join us. You're free to join us for lunch and a nice message. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon Thursday.
Representative Matsumoto.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon Thursday.